From the moment we tied the knot, a knot hastened by a sudden pregnancy, my wife, Sophia, retreated into a cool indifference that felt like a perpetual winter. Between us, after the initial blur of maternity leave faded, her presence became even more fleeting. She was rarely home, always finding reasons to be elsewhere. The air at our son's first birthday party hummed with forced festivity. Our friends, former classmates, mingled awkwardly. Then Julian arrived, Sophia's childhood friend. He strode in, radiating a casual confidence that always seemed to diminish me. He presented a lavish gift, a thick red envelope that drew eyes. Holding the envelope, he beamed, his gaze sweeping over the room before settling on our son. "Doesn't he look exactly like me?" Julian declared, his voice carrying just enough to silence the murmurs. "Cut from the same cloth, wouldn't you say?" I felt a connection, a fondness right away. A hush fell over the room. Dozens of eyes swiveled towards me, the silent question hanging in the air. How would the cuckolded husband respond? But I didn't flinch. A calm, almost detached smile touched my lips as I raised a hand, dismissing their silent anticipation. My voice was even, perhaps a little too casual. "So much like you, Julian," I echoed. "Well, then, he must be yours. Your flesh and blood. Why don't you just take him home and raise him?" The words hung in the air, sharp and unexpected. Sophia's carefully constructed composure shattered. Her face paled, a flicker of raw anger flashing before. It was quickly masked by mortification. Beneath it all, a telltale blush crept up her neck, betraying a guilt and unease she couldn't possibly hide. The festive air instantly solidified into awkward silence. The cheerful chatter died, replaced by stunned whispers. It felt like an eternity before Sophia finally managed a strained, brittle laugh. She turned to the guests, forcing a smile. "Ethan's had a bit too. Much to drink," she announced, her voice trembling slightly. "I'll just take him home to rest. Please, everyone, carry on. Don't let us spoil the fun." Julian, recovering his composure, also jumped in, eager to diffuse the tension. He clapped me on the shoulder, a little too hard. "What's gotten into? You old friend?" He chuckled nervously. "It was just a bit of banter. Come on, everyone, nothing to see here. Please, enjoy the rest of the party." I shrugged off Sophia's hand as she reached for me, a cold smile touching my lips again. My voice was calm, cutting through the awkward silence. "Oh, I'm perfectly sincere," I said. "Truly, I wish you both all the best. The party's winding down anyway. Why don't you two head off now? Perhaps celebrate, and start working on that second child tonight." My bluntness landed like a punch. Sophia's famed glass heart, the one she always claimed was so fragile, seemed to finally shatter. "Ethan, what is wrong with you?" she practically shrieked, her pretense of composure dissolving. "Julian and I haven't seen each other in ages. We're just friends, perfectly innocent. What are you so jealous of?" It was her default script, the same performance every time there was a crack in our facade. First, the cold shoulder, then, if I didn't immediately back down, the indignant accusations, telling me I was overthinking things, being unreasonable. But this time, it was different. The familiar sting wasn't there. The churning jealousy had finally subsided, replaced by a profound weariness. Our relationship had been built on shaky ground from the start. Sophia and Julian had been childhood sweethearts, their bond forged in shared laughter and whispered secrets. They'd been deeply, passionately in love for 4 years. Everyone who saw them believed they were destined for each other, a match made in some romantic heaven. It was only when Julian's family abruptly sent him abroad, right at the peak of their fervent romance, that Sophia, heartbroken and adrift, had finally agreed to let me into her life, agreed to let me pursue her. I, naive fool that I was, had clung to the desperate hope that my unwavering sincerity, my boundless patience, could eventually melt the ice around her heart. I believed I could earn her love, build it slowly, brick by painstaking brick, over time. I couldn't have been more wrong. The moment Julian stepped back onto home soil, years of my devoted effort, my patient nurturing, dissolved like mist in the sun. She didn't leave me, not explicitly, but she maintained a constant, undeniable connection with him. She insisted, repeatedly, that the romantic chapter of their lives was closed forever. Now, she claimed, they were merely the closest of friends, bound by years of shared history, understanding each other in a way no one else could. And against my better judgment, against the gnawing doubt in my gut, I chose to believe her. I wanted so desperately to believe her. Then, just when the tension was thickest, Sophia became pregnant. The unexpected news of a child, the dizzying prospect of finally having the family I longed for, swept me up in a feverish rush. I pushed aside my doubts, my lingering fears, and threw myself into wedding preparations. We married quickly, officially becoming husband and wife. Surely, I thought, now that we were bound by marriage, by a child, Julian's presence would finally fade into irrelevance. Surely, this was enough. Reality, as it always did, delivered a brutal blow. I lost count of the nights I spent wrestling with silent heartache, consumed by the casual intimacy she shared with Julian, their blatant disregard for my feelings. And every time I dared to voice my pain, my unease, I was met with the same dismissive, infuriating phrase. "You're overthinking it, Ethan." She'd argue that if she still harbored romantic feelings for Julian, she wouldn't be with me at all. She'd trot out the excuse that now that his parents were abroad and we had a child, she was the only person left in the world who truly understood Julian, his closest confidant. If she didn't look out for him, who would truly understand his thoughts, his feelings? The sheer absurdity of these justifications always left me speechless. They were flimsy, transparent excuses, yet she delivered them with an air of absolute conviction. We argued, we fought, we teetered on the brink of separation countless times. But always, she would reel me back in. A few carefully chosen sweet words, a fleeting moment of manufactured tenderness, and I would collapse, my resolve crumbling like dust, forgetting every hurt, every betrayal, like a man under a spell. My love for Sophia had become a sickness, a crippling vulnerability. I was utterly, abjectly humble, laying my sincere heart at her feet, daring her to crush it, and she always obliged. The low murmur of conversation around us was laced with judgment. Our former classmates, witnesses to this painful spectacle, were whispering, their eyes darting between us. I turned back to Sophia, the fatigue in my voice heavy. "Our son needs his biological father's presence in his life," I said, the words slow and deliberate. "Have you ever considered taking him to live with Julian?" Sophia froze, the color draining from her face. She bit her lip, her eyes flashing, then declared with a sudden, defiant anger, as if daring me to challenge her. "Ethan," she spat, her voice laced with fury and humiliation. "You're making a complete fool of yourself, and me, at our son's birthday party. It's utterly humiliating. I want a divorce." There it was, her ultimate weapon, deployed whenever she felt cornered. Before today, hearing those words would have sent me into a panic, scrambling to placate her, to beg her forgiveness for whatever imaginary offense I committed. But now, I felt nothing but a profound, unsettling calm. A flicker of amusement even. I smiled faintly. "All right," I said, my voice still maddeningly even. "If that's what you want, then let's do it." I paused, letting the implication sink in. "A pity, though," I added, letting the implication hang in the air. "With the new laws, there's that mandatory cooling-off period for divorce, isn't there? Might take a little longer for things to progress exactly as you might wish." Her reaction was immediate and dramatic. The defiance drained from her face, replaced by utter shock. She crumpled onto the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands, and began to sob, a wailing, mournful sound that was clearly meant for an audience. The classic damsel in distress. And who could resist rushing to the aid of a beautiful woman in tears? Immediately, her loyal guard of friends, women who had always adored her, descended upon me, their faces contorted with indignation. "Sophia and Julian? That was years ago," one friend shrieked, her voice dripping with accusation. "They're just innocent friends now, we all know that. We've seen it." "Honestly, Ethan," another chimed in, shaking her head in disgust. "Sophie is married to you, and you're causing this scene at your own son's party over ancient history. How can she ever show her face in public again? This is humiliating for everyone," a third spat. "Some things should be kept private, sorted out between a husband and wife, not aired like dirty laundry for everyone to see." And Julian? He stood slightly apart from the indignant circle, watching me. A faint, almost imperceptible smile played on his lips, his eyes holding a glint of pure mockery, of triumph. It was utterly, painfully absurd. In their eyes, I was the villain, the one who had destroyed the peace, the one who had brought shame upon poor, weeping Sophia. Because I had dared to challenge her, to expose the truth. However uncomfortable, she was the innocent victim, and I was the irredeemable monster. I took a deep, steadying breath, the air thick with unspoken accusations, and pushed my way through the indignant faces surrounding me. I walked towards the exit, towards the cool night air outside. Someone called my name from behind, their voice sharp with surprise. "Ethan," a voice demanded. "Sophia is still crying. Where do you think you're going?" I paused at the door, turning back with a faint, weary smile. "It's our son's first birthday," I said, my voice carrying across the now silent room. "Thank you all for coming, for celebrating with us," I added, the smile not reaching my eyes. "You all enjoy the rest of the evening. I have work tomorrow. I'll leave you to be entertained by the child's biological parents." As I walked out the door and into the night, I could still hear the hushed whispers behind me. They were saying I was like a different person, completely shedding the meek, gentle facade I usually wore. Some of Sophia's closest friends were openly sneering. "Ethan's clearly lost his mind," I heard one of them hiss. "Throwing a fit like that." And they were right, in their narrow view. In their world, Sophia deigning to marry me was a miracle, proof I'd earned cosmic favor. In a past life, I, the devoted licked dog, the pathetic admirer, had somehow stumbled into this incredible windfall, and I should have been eternally, humbly grateful. Our relationship had always been fundamentally unbalanced. I was the supplicant, she was the goddess, and a supplicant, surely, should accept whatever crumbs of attention or mistreatment their deity bestows, with gratitude. But it didn't matter anymore. Not one bit. The weight of their judgment, of Sophia's expectations, had finally lifted. I simply didn't care. Sophia had been drinking, Julian had been drinking. Neither could drive. The old Ethan would have waited, patiently, regardless of her drunken state or cutting words. He would have waited to drive her home, to ensure her safety, because she was his entire world. After all, wasn't that what a devoted husband did? Took care of his family? But what happens when the person you hold so dear, the one you've placed on a pedestal, utterly disdains your care, sees it not as devotion, but as an inconvenience? I reached into my pocket and pulled out a cigarette, lighting it with a hand that no longer trembled. Sophia detested the smell of smoke. Years ago, I had quit for her, banished cigarettes from my life as readily as I would have banished any threat to her happiness. Now, the harsh, unfamiliar bite of the smoke filled my lungs, stinging my throat, making me cough, then sneeze violently. But my heart felt impossibly, blissfully light. Free. If a relationship demanded constant self-abasement, endless compromise, and the slow erosion of one's soul just to survive, it wasn't love. It was something pathetic. A form of slow, deliberate self-destruction. I got into my car and drove back to our home. This house, it was the first major purchase of my life. A young, hopeful professional, I'd poured almost every penny of my meager savings into buying it, a tangible symbol of the future I envisioned. Once, I'd naively believed it would be our forever home. That Sophia and I would build a life here, raise our children within these walls, grow old together, content and happy. The thought now felt utterly, profoundly ridiculous. My phone buzzed incessantly on the passenger seat. I picked it up. It was Robert, my boss. The messages were about the overseas assignment. "Ethan, the Paris project is a huge opportunity, one that doesn't come around often. I strongly recommend you reconsider. It's a 5-year commitment, but the potential for growth, both professionally and financially, is immense. I've heard from the chairman himself. You'd be looking at a 7-figure salary upon your return, minimum." The company had a critical project in Paris, and I was the natural choice, the most experienced, the most capable candidate for the role. But I turned it down. How could I possibly leave? Leave Sophia? Leave my newborn son? It was unthinkable. I remembered the conversation with Robert when he'd first offered the opportunity. We'd been at a company dinner, raising glasses. "Robert," I'd said, my voice earnest, "I appreciate the opportunity truly, and I know you're looking out for me. But I believe family is the most important thing. I could never sacrifice my family for a career." I'd raised my glass. I'd regret it forever. My core belief hadn't changed. I still believed family was paramount. What I hadn't grasped, couldn't comprehend, was how vastly different the family I cherished in my heart was from the cold, distant reality I lived in. Robert, perhaps sensing my underlying conflict even then, sent another message. "Ethan, choosing self-improvement is thinking about your family's future. A supportive wife, a reasonable wife, would back you completely. It's only beneficial for her in the long run. Reasonable. When had Sophia ever embodied that word? I'd spent years by her side, devoted, compliant. In her estimation, I was likely no more significant than a stray dog she could whistle for when convenient and kick away when annoying. I was lost in these bitter reflections when the jingle of keys at the front door startled me. The door opened, and a wave of alcohol fumes preceded Sophia. She was being half-helped, half-dragged into the house by Chloe, one of her friends. Sarah was behind them, pushing the stroller with our son asleep inside. Trailing them was Mark, a guy I knew from university, who'd always been decent to me, pushing the baby carriage. Chloe quickly deposited a swaying Sophia onto the sofa and made her excuses, eager to escape the awkwardness. Mark lingered, however, offering a few hesitant words of counsel. "Look, Ethan," he said gently. When Sophia was really drunk, she was calling your name. I think she still cares about you, deep down." He urged. "Don't make things worse than they are, man. You guys just need to talk. Whatever happened with Julian was a long time ago, right? Don't ruin things over the past." I knew he meant well, genuinely trying to help. I thanked him, managed a polite smile I didn't feel, and closed the door softly behind him. Sophia calling my name? The old me would have clung to that single sentence like a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the darkness. I'd have dissected it, searching for hidden meaning, proof of her underlying affection. Hesitantly, curiosity warring with cynicism, I pushed open the bedroom door. Sophia was propped against the pillows, her dark hair fanned out around her. Even in her drunken state, she possessed a fragile beauty, like a mythical creature who had somehow wandered into this mundane world. It wasn't hard to see why so many men, myself included, had been utterly captivated by her for so long, why they couldn't seem to forget her. She was murmuring something, her voice thick with sleep and alcohol. I forced myself closer, ignoring the cloying smell of alcohol that hung in the air. She was, as Mark had said, calling my name. But Mark, bless his naive heart, hadn't heard the full sentence. Her actual words, slurred but unmistakable, were, "Ethan, get me some water." She didn't love me. I had known it, intellectually, for years. But reality seemed determined to hammer the point home, presenting the brutal truth. Again and again. In her eyes, I wasn't a husband, a lover, a partner. I was little more than a convenient, unpaid servant. A human appliance. A bitter, hollow laugh escaped my lips. I stood up slowly. I didn't fetch a wet cloth to wipe her face, didn't find her pajamas, didn't meticulously tuck the duvet around her shoulders. Instead, I walked out of the bedroom, towards the living room, towards my phone. I picked up my phone and typed my reply to Robert. "Robert, I've made my decision. I'll take the Paris assignment." Getting the visa, the assignment, it required proving French proficiency. A TCF score of at least B2. A daunting task. I didn't know a single word of French. I spent the rest of the night and the early hours of the morning researching language schools, frantically contacting tutors online. I booked intensive courses, signed up for conversation practice. It cost a considerable amount, and for a moment, the old habit of frugality, of hoarding every penny, made me wince. The old me, who would deny himself even the smallest comfort, who scrimped and saved endlessly. I remembered early business trips, surviving on instant noodles just so I could afford to bring Sophia back local delicacies, trinkets I thought would make her smile. But then the new feeling surged, not of regret, but of liberation. It wasn't too late. I was finally investing in myself, in my future. It was long overdue. Before I knew it, dawn was breaking. Sophia emerged from the bedroom later, looking disheveled, clearly suffering the consequences of a night without my usual solicitous care. She hadn't changed. Her makeup was smudged. Her hair askew. Yet, she acted as if nothing had happened. She padded into the kitchen and settled into her usual seat at the table, a silent expectation hanging in the air, the expectation of a freshly made breakfast. It was a familiar tactic, a subtle signal of truce she often employed after one of our disagreements. A simple gesture, a word, and the old me would have been at her side instantly, eager to mend the rift, to coax her back into good spirits. But I remained on the sofa, scrolling through language apps on my phone, not meeting her eyes. When I didn't immediately jump up, she tried a softer approach, her voice thin and shaky. "Ethan," she murmured, her voice slightly slurred. "I drank too. Much last night. My head is pounding." She sighed dramatically. "Why didn't you make me some hangover soup? Or help me change?" I think I'm catching a cold. It was wrapped in the guise of vulnerability, of seeking comfort. But the subtext was clear, a thinly veiled accusation of my neglect. The old Ethan would have fallen for it, rushing to make amends. But the foolish boy was gone. I heard the manipulation loud and clear. I replied, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. You know you're not good with alcohol, I said, my eyes still on my phone. Maybe don't overdo it next time. Sophia's face stiffened, her brows drawing together. She paused, then said defensively, Julian offered to drive me home last night, but I refused. Chloe and Sarah brought me back, didn't they? Then the accusation. I tried calling you. You didn't answer. The implication was clear. She had made a concession by not letting Julian take her home, and I was the one who had failed by not being available. I smiled faintly. I know, I said, cutting her off. About what we discussed yesterday, the divorce. She cut me off abruptly, her voice suddenly earnest. Julian's grandfather passed away, she said quickly, a practiced sympathy in her voice. He was Julian's last close relative here. He was so upset. I just stayed a little longer to comfort him, to talk him through it. Oh, I replied, my voice utterly devoid of interest. I had no desire to hear the carefully constructed narrative that would undoubtedly follow, the familiar justifications and emotional appeals. Sophia paused, taken aback by my bluntness. For once, the usual flash of anger didn't appear. Instead, she spoke with a forced patience. Look, I know yesterday was bad, but Julian and I. There are no buts, Sophia, I interrupted again firmly. There's nothing more to discuss about Julian. I smiled thinly, picked up my briefcase from the chair. Unless you're ready to talk about the divorce, I said, heading for the door. I'm going to work. We can discuss other things later. Ethan, she shrieked, finally dropping the pretense of calm. The true Sophia resurfaced, raw and furious. Can't you just talk to me properly? She demanded, her voice rising. I'm trying to explain. It was almost comical. To her, explaining meant delivering a carefully crafted monologue designed to elicit sympathy and acquiescence. Anything less was not listening, not understanding. She wasn't explaining. She was performing a solo act. And even if she had been genuinely trying to explain, it was too late. She had always known what I needed, what I longed for. The problem wasn't her ignorance. It was her indifference. And now I simply didn't care anymore. The longing was gone. Just as I reached the door, Sophia called out. There's a company party tomorrow, she said, her voice softer now, almost hesitant. I'm going with Julian. My hand was on the doorknob. I didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. Is that right? I said, turning the knob. Well, have a good time. The old Ethan would have been crushed, would have immediately found a way to insert himself into that situation. He would have begged, cajoled, demanded to go. With her. After all, she was the dazzling campus beauty, the one everyone's eyes were drawn to. I was just the quiet, unremarkable guy who somehow managed to capture her attention, however fleetingly. My insecurity in that relationship had been profound. I'd spent years desperately trying to prove I was worthy, that I belonged by her side, prove that I could make her happy, that I could be enough, that her choosing me, however reluctantly, hadn't been a mistake. But I was wrong. Terribly, profoundly wrong. At the office, Robert walked me through the details of the Paris assignment, outlining the timeline and requirements. The most immediate challenge, securing that B2 French certification in just 2 months. A tight deadline for a beginner. Languages had never been my strength. English had been a struggle. I'd taken the CET6 exam 3 times before finally passing. There was no magic solution, just brute force. I plastered sticky notes all over my desk, my computer, even the break room walls, each one bearing a handful of essential French words. I recited them silently, constantly. My colleagues teased me, said I looked like I was back in high school, cramming for exams. I smiled, but inside, my emotions were a tangled mess. If only I could go back to those simpler days, before the messy complications of love and heartbreak, before this crushing entanglement with Sophia. If I had the chance to live it all again, I would run in the opposite direction. I would steer clear of Sophia, choose a quiet, peaceful life for myself. I was wrestling with subjunctive verbs when my phone chimed. A notification. Julian had posted on Moments. It was a photo of them. Julian, resplendent in a tailored suit, was beaming, looking every bit the successful, happy man. Beside him, Sophia, in a stunning backless evening gown, was clinging to his arm, looking fragile and adoring. The very picture of feminine dependence. The caption was a calculated strike, aimed directly at me. Some people are only meant to walk with you for a little while. Others are meant for a lifetime. Sophia had not only liked the post, but had commented with a heart emoji. A public declaration of her allegiance, her preference. The old me, consumed by paranoia, had set their WeChat accounts to special attention, ensuring I saw every post, every interaction, even when it twisted the knife in my gut. Even when what I saw confirmed my worst fears, reinforcing the chasm between Sophia's public face and the painful reality of her connection with Julian. Before I would have dropped everything, no matter how important, and rushed to wherever they were, desperate to insert myself between them, to break the spell. Now I simply scrolled past the post, tapped cancel special attention on both their profiles, and returned to my French vocabulary. La maison, la rue, l'amour. Funny, that last one. Did it hurt? Not anymore. The well of pain had finally run dry. Looking at the photo, objectively, they were a handsome pair, pleasing to the eye, like characters in a movie I no longer cared to watch. I pushed the image, the caption, the whole painful history to the back of my mind, and submerged myself in the alien sounds and grammar of French, the language that held the key to my escape. That night, and for the next few nights, I slept at the office, curled up on the small couch in the break room. Each day brought small victories, a growing confidence in the new language. Sophia finally broke the silence. She called, not texted. "We haven't had dinner together in ages," she said, her voice carefully casual. "And our son misses you." This felt like an opportunity, a chance to talk, to finally set things straight. "All right," I said, surprising myself with how easily the word came. "I'll come back today." A beat of silence stretched between us. Then, a slight hesitation in her voice, she said, Let's eat out tonight, okay? I'm not really set up to cook." Right. I'd forgotten. Sophia had never learned to cook. When we had guests, I was the one who planned the menu, did the shopping, cooked the elaborate meals. She rarely even helped with washing up afterwards. I had, however, seen her cook exactly once. Julian had had a flare-up of his chronic stomach condition, and she'd rushed home, frantic, to make him some comforting porridge. She'd fumbled with the small clay pot, burning her finger. I'd rushed to her side, my heart clenching with concern, gently applying ointment, my voice tight with a resentment I couldn't contain. Julian could have just ordered takeout. I'd snapped, the bitterness spilling out. Did he really need you, the woman who's never cooked a meal for her own husband, to rush home and play nursemaid? Her face had frozen, the tenderness towards Julian replaced by immediate indignation towards me. She snatched her hand away, her eyes flashing. "Julian was sick," she'd retorted, her voice sharp. "He needed me. Why do you always have to be so petty, so jealous of him?" I stared at my empty palm, the space where her hand had been, the unspoken ache in my chest of physical pain. How could she have known? Or perhaps, how could she have cared? I suffered from a chronic stomach condition myself. It had worsened over the years, exacerbated by stress, by the constant turmoil of our relationship, reaching a point where surgery became unavoidable. The day I was wheeled into the operating room, she was away on a business trip. My hesitant attempts to convey the fear, the pain, were met with hurried, distracted responses. A dismissive, "Wait till I get back, I'll find you a good herbalist," and the conversation was promptly steered back to her own itinerary, her own concerns. She returned from her trip eventually, but the promised herbalist never materialized. My recovery, my pain, was a problem I faced alone. I sighed, a sound filled with years of unacknowledged pain, pulling myself back to the present. I gathered my things and walked out of the office building. And there it was, Sophia's car, parked at the curb. A sight so rare, it felt like the sun rising in the west. She saw me, and a flicker of something, was it relief? Touched her expression. Before she could speak, I simply nodded politely, opened the passenger door, and got in. An awkward silence descended. Sophia started the car, her hands tied on the wheel. "Ethan," she finally said, her voice hesitant. "Aren't you going to say anything? Don't you want to talk?" The old me would have leaped at the chance, desperately scrambling for topics, anything to fill the silence, to prevent the suffocating awkwardness that always seemed to settle between us. Now, I just replied, my voice flat. "Didn't you say our son missed me? Why didn't you bring him?" She bit her lip, hesitating. Does Does he have to be here for you to come home? She asked softly, the carefully constructed facade cracking slightly. I sighed, a quiet sound of resignation. The Sophia who once seemed almost eager for me to be gone, freeing up her time. That version seemed like a ghost now. Soon, we pulled up outside a barbecue place she'd chosen. It was a place I actually loved, a casual, slightly greasy spot that served fantastic skewers. Sophia, however, had always disdained it, complaining about the smell, the crowds, the supposed lack of hygiene. She almost never agreed to come with me. I wondered what had prompted the sudden change of heart. She slid into the booth, looking slightly uncomfortable, the casual setting clearly not her element. I already ordered, she said quickly, gesturing to the table. All your favorites. Lots of spice, just how you like it. The familiar, mouth-watering aroma hit me, and despite the chronic ache in my stomach, a genuine hunger stirred. But hunger was hunger. And after days of instant noodles and dry company sandwiches, the prospect of real food was too tempting to resist. The old saying was true, food came first. Just as I reached for a skewer, a jarring ringtone cut through the air. Sophia's phone. My eyes, despite everything, were still sharp. I couldn't help but see the name flashing on the screen, Julian. Sophia flinched, her hand shooting out awkwardly to flip the phone screen down. I pretended not to notice, meticulously inspecting the perfectly grilled meat on my skewer. The phone vibrated persistently, stopping only to immediately ring again, a relentless demand for attention. Sophia looked visibly annoyed, her hand hovering over the decline button, yet she hesitated. She'd answered his calls in front of me countless times before. What was different now? While she debated, I calmly reached for another chicken wing skewer. You should probably answer that, I said, my voice calm. He seems persistent. Probably something urgent. She finally answered, putting the phone to her ear. Julian's voice, even filtered through the phone, was clear, urgent, and demanding. Sophia, what's going on? Why haven't you answered your phone? He barked. I need you to come over right now. It's urgent. Sophia frowned, her voice tight. Julian, what's so important it can't wait? Can't you just tell me over the phone? Perhaps she had never used such a tone with him before, because Julian was clearly taken aback. Sophia, he said, his voice softer now, laced with concern. Are you all right? You sound upset. Sophia didn't reply immediately, but I saw the flicker of indecision, of the old pull, on her face. I smiled faintly. It sounds important, I said, keeping my voice even. A family matter, perhaps? You should go. You said you were his closest confidant, after all. Sophia didn't reply to my comment. She quickly ended the call, then turned to me, her face etched with what looked like guilt. Ethan, she said, her voice urgent. You know Julian's mother, don't you? Mrs. Thompson? She practically raised me when my parents were busy. She was like a second mother to me. I nodded slowly. Yes, I know, I said. She was kind to you. I gestured towards the door. Go. She needs you. The words were barely out of my mouth before Sophia grabbed her coat, a visible eagerness to leave replacing the guilt. She almost ran for the door. Seeing me still sitting there, calmly eating, she paused at the door. A flicker of something, perhaps regret, crossed her face. Tomorrow, she said, her voice softer now. Come home for dinner tomorrow? Please. I paused, chewing. All right, I said, my voice neutral. I'll come back early. I'll cook. My simple, factual reply seemed to deflate her. The hope, the tentative connection she might have been seeking, wasn't there. She turned silently and walked out the door. I chewed the now cold skewers, the flavor muted, and pulled out my French vocabulary book. I knew why my answer had disappointed her. The old Ethan would have reacted with effusive gratitude, promising to cook a feast, asking what she craved, what time she'd be home. My colleagues used to tease me endlessly, calling me Sophia's little nanny, because of the way I catered to her every need. I had worn the title like a badge of honor. I'd even felt smug, believing they simply didn't understand the depth of my devotion, the romance of my sacrifice. Now, the memory brought only a deep, bitter wave of shame. This barbecue place, it had held a special significance for me, once. From the second floor, you could see the river, shimmering under the night sky. On special occasions, like our dating anniversary, it offered a perfect view of the fireworks displays over the water. But Sophia, she always found fault with it, complained it was too smoky, too casual, lacking the refined ambience she craved. Every time I'd suggest it, she'd make excuses, find a way to leave early. If only she'd waited just 10 or 15 minutes longer on those nights, she would have seen the spectacular fireworks light up the sky. Now, picking up a skewer of their signature rolled vegetables, the taste was flat, unremarkable. The magic was gone. The next evening, I went home early, as promised. I cooked a full table of Sophia's favorite dishes, prepared with the care that was once a testament to my love, now just a habit, a performance. The housemaid was off for the evening, and our son was sleeping soundly in his crib. Looking at him now, objectively, in the quiet calm of the house, I saw no resemblance to Julian at all. Not in his eyes, not in his features. None. And I could, now, with a surprising lack of emotion, genuinely believe that Sophia had never, in fact, physically betrayed me. The child was mine. But what did that knowledge change? What comfort did it bring now? The real betrayal hadn't been physical. It had been the slow, insidious erosion of myself. Over the years, I had become someone I didn't recognize. Every whisper, every overheard snippet of conversation about Sophia and Julian had sent me into a frenzy of anxious inquiry, digging, prodding, desperate for confirmation of my deepest fears. I knew, even then, how pathetic, how utterly unlikable that version of myself was. But I was powerless to stop it. My emotional state was utterly tethered to Sophia's actions, her moods, her choices. It wasn't until I made the conscious decision to sever the emotional tether, to finally let go of my desperate, clinging attachment to Sophia, that I finally began to breathe again, to break free from the emotional prison I had built around myself. Even tonight, alone with our son, playing quietly until he drifted off to sleep, the familiar ache in my chest was gone, replaced by a profound, almost unsettling peace. The next morning, I silently scraped the elaborate, uneaten dinner into the trash. The housemaid arrived, and I left for the office, ready for another day of work and French lessons. The morning meeting dragged on, tedious and soul-crushing. By the time it finally ended, the entire team was ravenous, stomachs rumbling in unison. Looking at my colleagues' weary faces, a rare impulse struck me. Lunches. On me, I announced. My treat. The office erupted in cheers, the sudden offer a welcome break from the post-meeting slump. They swarmed me, laughing, pushing me towards the door in their eagerness to escape the office. And then I stopped. Standing just outside the entrance, as if waiting, was the figure I had somehow expected to see, Sophia. She saw me surrounded by my laughing colleagues. My usual solitary figure transformed into the center of attention. A flicker of something that looked like hurt, almost like jealousy, crossed her face. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I called you. Several times. You didn't answer. I checked my phone. Several missed calls from her. I had genuinely forgotten about them, too focused on escaping the meeting and getting lunch." My colleagues, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, quickly dispersed, melting away to give us privacy, their earlier enthusiasm forgotten. Sophia broke the awkward silence. "I'm sorry about last night," she murmured, not meeting my eyes. "Julian's mother, Mrs. Thompson, she had a sudden medical issue. I was with her at the hospital. My phone died. I couldn't call you." I nodded. "Is she all right?" "A sudden spike in blood sugar," Sophia replied. "The doctor said she just needs rest. She'll be fine." "Good," I said flatly. "That's good to hear." Another heavy silence fell between us. Finally, Sophia spoke again, her voice low, almost hesitant. I heard you're going to France." I didn't deny it. "Next month," I confirmed simply. Sophia lowered her head, her shoulders slumping, giving the appearance of profound hurt, as if I had committed some terrible betrayal. 5 years, she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're going away for 5 years, and you didn't even tell me?" I looked at the top of her head, at her slumped posture, and felt a wave of bone-deep weariness wash over me. Sophia had made decisions about our life, about Julian, about everything, for years, never once seeking my opinion, merely informing me of her choices. Yet now I was expected to give her advance notice? I couldn't fathom what she was truly feeling, or why she expected me to cater to her emotions now, of all times. I sighed. "Is there anything else, Sophia?" I asked. "Because if not, my team's waiting for lunch, and I have to study for my exam later." I genuinely had no time, no emotional energy left, for this performance of hers. Sophia's eyes filled with tears, her voice catching. "Ethan," she choked out, her voice thick with unshed tears. Do you even remember what today is? My mind, solely focused on work and study, immediately supplied the answer. Thursday, team meeting day. I almost said it out loud before, catching myself. She didn't wait for me to answer. It's my birthday, she cried. My birthday, Ethan. You never forgot before. It clicked. Her sudden desire for me to come home for dinner, her unusual choice of restaurant. It was all about her birthday. And she was right. I had never, ever forgotten her birthday. Every single year, for months beforehand, I would meticulously plan, search for the perfect gift, organize the celebration. I poured all my energy, my creativity, into finding something truly unique, something that would show her how much she meant to me. But Sophia, she rarely seemed to appreciate them. I'd found them shoved, unopened, into drawers, forgotten the moment they were given. And I'd overheard her, more times than I could count, laughing with her friends about my terrible taste, my boring gifts. Ethan's presents, I'd heard her giggle once. Honestly, sometimes they're so awful I'm embarrassed to even show them to anyone, followed by peals of laughter from her friends. In those moments, I could only force a strained smile, the bitter taste of humiliation filling my mouth. Inside, though, I was a mess of conflicting emotions, utterly lost, unsure how to react, how to feel. It was even on her birthday, years ago, that I'd hidden an engagement ring in a cake, planning to propose, to finally secure our future. But Sophia, she hadn't come home. That night, she stumbled in the next morning, hours after the sun had risen, her makeup smeared, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I'd asked what was wrong, terrified. She was hurt, but she just clenched her jaw, refusing to speak. When I pressed her, she'd lashed out, pointing a trembling finger at me, screaming at me to leave, to get out of her sight. It wasn't until much later, from a well-meaning friend, that I learned the truth. Julian had returned to the country. That day, her birthday. Ethan, Sophia said again, her voice pleading. You didn't actually forget, did you? You're just angry, aren't you? Pretending you don't remember because you're mad about yesterday? She stepped closer. Please, she begged. Just forgive me. Whatever you want, I'll do it. I'll apologize, I'll make things right. And the Paris job? Go. It's okay. 5 years, 10 years, I'll wait for you. I promise. If only she had said these things years ago. If only she had meant them then. What good were they now? Looking at her, at the tears welling in her eyes, at the desperate plea in her expression, a familiar ache stirred in my chest. Years of ingrained habit, of wanting to protect her, kicked in. My resolve wavered. After all, this was the woman I had loved so completely, so blindly, for so many years. I was leaving anyway, cutting her out of my life completely. What harm could one last act of kindness do? One final, fleeting moment of the past before I stepped fully into the future. I looked at her and smiled, a genuine, if weary, smile this time. Of course I didn't forget, Sophia, I said gently. And I'm not angry. Not really. I reached out and lightly touched her arm. Your birthday is important. Look, I'll take the rest of the day off. Let's go home. We'll celebrate properly. Her face lit up, the tears forgotten. The familiar, dazzling smile I had so desperately craved for years finally appeared. She reached out, her hand slipping naturally into the crook of my arm, as if nothing had happened. Let's have quick fried tripe, she exclaimed happily. And braised prawns. Your famous braised prawns. She squeezed my arm. And if you go to Paris, she added, you have to write down all your recipes. No 5-star chef could ever make your prawns taste as good. I smiled and nodded, a pang of sadness in my chest. Not just the recipes. Sophia, everything about you, every memory, good or bad. I'll keep them, tucked away safely. This will be our graceful exit. A final act of politeness before we close the book. That afternoon, we played the parts we had perfected over the years. For a few hours, it felt like stepping back in time. I indulged her every whim, joked with her, made her laugh until her eyes sparkled, just like I used to. But the fragile illusion shattered the moment we reached the front door. Julian was standing on our doorstep. He was beaming, holding a gift bag, reaching out automatically to take the shopping bags from Sophia. Sophia, he exclaimed, his smile widening. I've missed your birthday the last few years being away. My mother insisted I make up for it this year. A surprise party. Well, just me, really. Hope you like it. Sophia recoiled as if burned, turning sharply away from him, her expression freezing. No, she said, her voice cold. Just no. You should leave. Julian's practiced smile faltered, a flicker of genuine surprise and hurt crossing his face at her abrupt rejection. He glanced at me, standing silently beside Sophia, then back at her. Then, a look of dawning comprehension, perhaps even amusement, spread across his features. "Oh," he said, a chuckle forcing its way out. "You're worried about Ethan? Don't be silly. We're just family, close friends now. Right, Ethan? You're not still upset about my little joke the other day, are you?" "Huh?" His forced laughter was cut short. Sophia dropped the shopping bags with a thud and turned on Julian, shoving him hard. "Get out," she shrieked, her voice raw with sudden, fierce anger. "Get out of my house. Now." Julian, stunned into silence, backed away, his gift bag forgotten. Sophia slammed the door shut, leaving him standing bewildered on the porch. I sighed inwardly, shaking my head, and walked into the house. The moment I stepped inside, Sophia whirled around and threw herself into my arms. She clung to me, her body trembling slightly. It wasn't remorse I felt from her, not truly. It was fear. Fear that Julian's appearance had somehow jeopardized the comfortable, catered-to life she had with me, the life where she was treated like a princess. "Ethan," she sobbed into my chest. "I didn't know he was coming. I didn't invite him, I swear. Please, don't be angry." I gently stroked her hair, a soft, sad smile on my face. "Don't worry," I murmured softly. "It's your birthday. The birthday girl shouldn't cry." And for the rest of the evening, I played the part. I cooked her favorite meal, decorated the cake I'd ordered, even bought sparklers, and took her downstairs to light them, watching her twirl and laugh like a child. Back upstairs, settled on the sofa, she suddenly turned and hugged me fiercely. Her voice was muffled against my shirt, thick with emotion. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I was so happy today. Just now, I was thinking how good you are to me. How incredibly good." She pulled back slightly, looking up at me, tears tracing paths through her makeup. "And then I realized, you've always been this good. Every day, all these years. I've been so stupid," she sobbed. "So selfish. I hurt you. I took you for granted. I was so willful. Can you forgive me, Ethan? Please? I'll change. I won't see Julian anymore. I won't talk to him. I won't run off. I won't leave our son alone. We can go back. We can be like we were. Please." How could I tell her? How could I explain that the person she was apologizing to, the man who had loved her so fiercely, was gone? That the well of my love, so deep and boundless once, had run dry, utterly depleted by years of neglect, of indifference, of being taken for granted. I held her for a long moment, patting her back gently. "Okay," I said softly, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. "I promise." She pulled back, her face streaked with tears, but a fragile smile blooming. Really, she didn't know that it was the first truly significant lie I had ever told her. Later, after she had drifted off to sleep, exhausted by the emotional day, I looked in on our son, sleeping peacefully in his crib. Then, I quietly closed the bedroom door. I hadn't come back to stay. I had come back for my luggage. I had lied to Sophia. My flight to Paris was booked for the next day. I left a letter on the kitchen counter, next to the divorce papers I had already prepared. Then, resolutely, without a backward glance, I walked out of the house that had held so many painful memories, so many shattered dreams. Sitting on the plane the next day, watching the city shrink below, I felt a profound sense of release. The years of bitterness, the suffocating jealousy, the gnawing resentment, they seemed to lift, carried away by the roar of the engines, dissolving into the vast sky. I was just approaching the security gate when I heard a frantic shout behind me. "Ethan! Ethan Thompson!" I paused, wondering if I was hallucinating. Then I turned. It was Sophia. She was holding our son, her face a mask of desperation. She had clearly run all the way here. Her hair was disheveled. Her clothes looked hastily thrown on, utterly out of place in the calm, organized airport terminal. And then, in her panic, she reverted to the familiar script, the one that had always worked before. "What are you doing, Ethan?" she cried, her voice raw. "Julian and I were just talking, completely innocent. You can't seriously be leaving, not over that stupid joke." Our son, clutched tightly in her arms, started to cry too, sensing his mother's distress. "I don't want a divorce. Please, don't go. I'll wait for you. 5 years, 10 years. I'll wait." Sophia was sobbing, her words tumbling out in a desperate, incoherent rush. "I know I messed up. I'll change everything. Anything you want. Just Just take me with you. The sound of her weeping, the child's cries. It felt like a silent echo of those 3 words, unspoken but clear. Please, please, please. Robert appeared beside me, a calm, solid presence. Still time to board, he said quietly, his gaze following mine. Wanna handle this? I shook my head, the gesture firm, decisive. I looked back at Sophia, still clutching our son, her face a picture of raw despair. My voice was low, but steady, devoid of emotion. Sophia, I said, my voice carrying just enough to reach her over the noise of the terminal. It's over. We're done, I added, laying out the legal reality. That had once seemed so daunting, now just a formality. You don't have to sign the papers now. After 2 years of separation, I can file for divorce anyway. My voice held no hint of the old desperation, the old love, the old willingness to be manipulated. And in that moment, I knew Sophia understood, truly understood, for the first time, that there was no going back. No more second chances. No more us. I didn't look back at the figure on the ground, at the sound of her heartbroken sobs mingling with the child's cries. I turned, squared my shoulders, and walked towards the security gate. My new life, my new future, waited on the other side.